Okay, so we know worldwide fraud is costing over 22 billion sort of in the past year. And you know, all companies that take payments over the phone are subject to PCI DSS. So Alex, how can I make PCI DSS easier to manage for my company?
That's a very good question, because I think a lot of organizations face that issue. So PCI DSS has a number of ways that you can self-certify that you are PCI compliant. But depending on how you do that will affect which route you go down, and also what self-assessment questionnaire or SAQ you have to complete. And there's loads of information on the internet about it, so it's fairly easy to identify what you have to do as an organization to self-certify your PCI compliance. But the issue is, what is the overhead that goes along with self-certifying that you're PCI compliant? So, for example, if you're going for what they call level 2 PCI compliance, you fill out a questionnaire called a SAQ, self-assessment questionnaire D, that has about 380 odd questions, so fairly lengthy. If you're going for level 1 compliance, you have to fill out an SAQ A questionnaire, which only has about 15 to 20 questions, say. So there's a massive admin burden that goes along with PCI compliance, as well as if I'm a company who provides PCI compliance, really, do I want the headache of having to be responsible for being PCI compliant? I would think that I'd actually want to de-risk myself as much as I possibly can. So that's where I would come from. And I think what we're seeing with some of our customers is that they've taken traditional routes, so the level 2 compliance, where they're taking traditional routes of using call recording solutions, which have an auto pause and resume when the payment is taken. But there's certain downsides to doing that. So what I think is probably a good way of illustrating it is if I talk about one of the customers we're working with, who has gone through that process and that decision-making process of whether they're going to be level 1 or level 2 compliant and what the outcome was. So the one I'm thinking of is in the windscreen replacement business for vehicles, and typically they work with either individuals through insurance companies, so they have contracts with a particular insurance company, or they have their own corporate policies with enterprise businesses, and all fleet vehicles for windscreen replacements are done through them. And any individual will ring them up saying, my windscreen or my window's broken, I need it replacing. So what they have had in place was a standard call recorder, which would have the auto pause and resume, and that's fine. But it means certain things, like not all of that customer conversation was recorded, because the moment the agent starts taking the payment details, the recording is paused. So who knows what goes on between the agent and the customer? Plus, it also means that the agent is being exposed to the customer's card details. And that's the critical bit. So in an ideal world, we don't want that to happen, which is why it means that organizations who do use the pause resume functionality have to go into a lot more detail about how do they handle data, because if it's not in the right environment, agents can potentially be exposed to the card data, and it can potentially compromise the compliance of that particular organization, which is something that no employer really wants. So what they've done in the end is they've taken a DTMF masking solution, and it's been really quite simple. So in this particular case, we host and manage their telephony platform. It's held in our private cloud, and we have provided deep links resilient links that deeply integrate from our platform into this DTMF masking cloud solution. So it's meant the customer hasn't really had to do that much and get involved in enabling it, but they have the benefit of completely de-risking their exposure to PCI compliance. And from as I was talking earlier, their compliance officer has much less of an admin overhead to answer the self-assessment questionnaire, because it is only 15 to 20 questions long. Makes it so much easier for them. And on top of that, because we are providing them with that, what's called level 1 PCI compliance, we are able to give them an attestation of certification. I always get tongue-tied about that. Or an AOC, that's a lot easier. That they can provide to the corporates or to the insurers that they work with, saying, look, guys, here you are. Here's the proof that we are level 1 PCI compliant. And that was another driver. Some of those, particularly insurance companies, were requiring them to be level 1 compliant. And then lastly, and the last 2 points are that it means that the agents are not exposed to card data. Because in practice, what happens is throughout this interaction now, the customer carries on talking to the agent. The agent guides the customer through inputting their relevant details, you know, the card number, the CVV, security code, the expiry date, and they enter it into a portal, a web interface, that is. But they carry on with that conversation with the customer. Because we are masking these DTMF tones, you know, the tones generated by the phone, and it doesn't matter whether it's a landline phone, a digital phone, an IP phone, a mobile phone, it doesn't matter. We mask those tones. So the agent hears a single beep irrespective of the numbers being pressed. So they never can get the card data, which is vital.
Yes.
It also gives the customer secure peace of mind, because they're not exposed to, they know the agent can't hear their data. And the agent will say right at the beginning, oh, just to let you know, I'm securing the line so your touch tone tones are protected and made secure. And then the last benefit particularly is that that piece of the conversation between the agent and the customer can carry on being recorded.
Yeah.
So if there was something that happened or was said during that element of the call, the organisation taking card details and payments can still investigate it and hear what was said on the phone. So I think, you know, I think that's a really good example of how they've approached it and how we've been able to help.
Yes. Yeah. And presumably that sort of overcomes, I think CNP is a key, the sort of most common type of credit card fraud in the UK. So that would, which is where credit card not presented, where you don't actually physically have the card in front of you. So that would overcome that key type of fraud as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it also, you know, the type of thing that we've provided is, yes, in this case, it was a customer who used our own resilient SIP platform, but you don't have to. It could be as if they're using their own SIP provider or they've got ISDN lines, this service can still work with that. And it really means that the onus of responsibility is pushed away from our customers and organizations who take payments, because they are completely de-risked from and unexposed to card data. We don't retain any of the card data either. So yes, the customer's using DTMF tones, but because it goes straight into a masking platform, those are prevented from being heard from anything. The call recording hears a single tone irrespective of the number, and we don't retain any data. So in the background, we're just passing information straight to what are called the payment service providers. So the likes of Global Pay, World Pay, and they have the data. So in using something like this, you're really pushing the responsibility back onto those payment service providers to manage and make card data secure.
Yes. Cool. I think that answers that question.